Today's guest is a former Major League Baseball player with the Atlanta Braves and Los Angeles Dodgers. He signed with the Braves as an undrafted free agent in 2008 and then went on to play 5 years in the big leagues after that. Today, he's running a successful franchise business as well as consulting retiring athletes on whether business ownership is right for them through franchising. His name is Brandon Beachy. So really cool to talk to Brandon and just hear about his story of getting to the big leagues and really how there's no expectation for him to get there. And he just kept pushing through and just kept soaking in things along the way. He talked about coachability, leaning into what's working, and then franchise ownership and what he's up to these days. So again, thanks for tuning in. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year as we head into the end of the year. And thank you for the continued support. So here's my conversation with Brandon Beachy. We're live, man. I'm joined by former MLB right-handed pitcher, Brandon Beachy. Brandon, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. Happy to chat.
Absolutely. So I feel like you do your fair share of these, right? You've come on a few podcasts and just share your story.
I do. I try to get my story out there as much as possible these days, and that's not been a comfortable thing for me at times. I'm not, a super extrovert. Putting myself out there was a challenge, but after I left baseball, it was a real challenge for me. I dealt with a lot of doubt, a lot of fear, and I want to get my story out there to any athlete that is going through that right now, just so they know they're not alone. I just left the MLB Career Summit this past weekend, and that's what the whole thing was about. We going through sports at a high level, develop certain skills and abilities that have value. Whether you get out in your 30s like me with nothing but sports on your resume, we have real value that will translate to the real world in a big way. And just being told that would have helped me. So I like kind of putting that out there, and hopefully, somebody that needs to hear that hears it.
Absolutely, man. It's great. Yeah. Cause I'm sure somebody who's going through that can use your story as, just something to hear and maybe help them along the way. So it's awesome. But I figured I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your career, obviously, before we dive into what you're doing these days. But you really have like an underdog story, not really heavily recruited and undrafted. So where do you think that mindset like that allowed you to get to the point you did started from?
I don't know. I think there was some freedom mentally in never thinking that I was really going to play in the big leagues, never thinking that I was going to play professionally at all. So there was no pressure. I was just learning. Like when I started pitching, it was just fun. It was something different than what I used to do, and I could kind of tinker around with it and try it, but it wasn't a serious thing. And I think I found freedom in that allowed me to develop quickly. Even once I signed and went to the pros, I was still learning. So it was, my sights were set in a different spot, I think, than a lot of people. Just that I was trying to take everything in. There was no ego about my pitching ability. When instructors would come through town or whatever, when they're giving people pointers and stuff, sometimes you'd have people like, well, the way I do things got me drafted, and there was some hesitancy to be open, whereas, man, I was a sponge. I was going to try and dive in head first to anything that was pointed out and any kind of help that was offered. And I think, not just adapting those tips, but just showing the willingness, the coachability, I think changed the perception of me to the organization I was with.
So you think ego gets in the way of a lot of guys, like top rounders? I mean, Yeah, that's I'm sure you could say that about a lot of things. Like you think that you're too good to continue learning. Is that fair to
Well,
say? Like you think
there's a
guys will
fine line. There's a fine line in sports. You need supreme confidence to perform at a high level, right? And it happens a lot of times where that confidence leads into, it borders on arrogance and ego, um, where it can affect, I think, coachability to an extent. Um, I think the minor leagues in baseball is a unique situation where yeah, you've gotten somewhere. You might be on a trajectory, but you still have a long way to go. So there's a lot of growth that needs to happen. Well, as a young guy in the lower minor leagues, you don't really know what it takes to succeed, to even move to double A, triple A, let alone get to the big leagues and stay there. So, but yeah, I definitely saw a lot of guys that, they thought they knew best. And if something didn't, even if they would try something right away, if it didn't work right away, there was a whole mental struggle, I guess, going on. Well, should I really buy into this? Why are they messing with me? And I just came at it from the standpoint of, I'm maybe naively believing that hey, if they're telling me something, it's because they they see something that might work at a higher level that I might not need now at this level to succeed. But if I want to succeed at a different level, that's what they're trying to develop. So I was just open to all. I was just happy as an undrafted guy to get the attention of some of these people to invest their time into looking at me and trying to help me. So I was more than willing to do anything and everything that they would suggest to me.
hmm Yeah, that's a interesting perspective to keep though, right? I mean, when you're going through it, it would be easy to say like, I'm the undrafted guy. Why am I not getting this opportunity or that? And I feel like not many people can keep that perspective that you're talking about. Like, what did you do to maintain that almost? I mean, maybe it goes back to your upbringing. I think you're one of 7 kids, right? Which is kind of
Yeah,
crazy. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. Well, it all happened pretty quickly in the minor leagues too, so that helped.
Mhm.
So like as I saw success, um, as I bought into new things, and I saw success quickly, and they moved me quickly. So it just reinforced that they saw something, and what they were trying to do for me was working, and that I need to just lean into that because it was taking me places that I didn't truly deep down believe I would ever get. So I just kind of rode that wave and worked at it as hard as I could.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's awesome. So I know you actually you debuted against the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I
S-
did,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm in Philadelphia, so grew up a big Phils fan, and that lineup was probably I'm sure that was like Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, some of those
Oh
guys that
yeah,
were in that lineup. Oh yeah,
oh yeah. Jimmy
yeah,
Rollins,
J. Roll,
uh,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
think Jason Worth, Victorino,
hmm
Carlos Ruiz. Yeah,
yep,
that they had
yep.
a formidable squad to say the least. Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yeah, they sure did. Um, you remember your emotion that day because I think you were filling in for Jurgens, right? Like, what were
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah,
that,
what were
that
you
was
feeling on that on that day?
not a lot, honestly. I felt weird going to the ballpark because there was, I wasn't scheduled to throw, and I was there in case Jair couldn't go. And I had heard from a teammate that he was likely going to be able to go. So I just, it was like almost embarrassment and awkwardness going there thinking, well, hey, they're going to send me, I'm going to fly back to Orlando later tonight. Like, I don't want to walk into this big league clubhouse for the first time and see guys that I've never met before, and have them kind of look at me like, oh, who's this? What's he doing here? And not really having, an answer for that. So I kind of came in fully expecting, I even told my parents not to come. Like, hey, I heard last night he was telling people his knee feels fine. He's going to be able to go. So, it was quite the shock when Bobby Cox came back in from outside and handed me a baseball and said, "You got it tonight." So, yeah. And from that point on, I didn't really have time to think or even feel emotions because, right behind him came Brian McCann and David Ross scooping me up, taking me to the video room to start going through their lineup and start talking about, me. They've never seen me pitch. They don't know what I throw. So to talk to them about what I throw and what I like, and then go through scouting reports, and then right into basically the pregame routine and getting going and just worrying, just getting back into my process. So I didn't really have a lot of time, and I think that worked out for me to not sit there and be like, no, oh my God, I'm about to make a major league debut. I'm about to, make my childhood dream come true. Like I didn't have time to think any of those thoughts, thankfully.
Yeah. Less time to think sometimes is good. Brian McCann. So throwing to Brian McCann, that he was an intense dude. That the first thing that comes to my mind when you mention his name is that video of Carlos Gomez hitting that homer and
yeah, off of Paul Maholm, I believe.
Is that who that? Okay. Were you on that? Were you on that team?
I was there. Yeah, I was there for that one. I was there for there was another one too with Jose Fernandez, the late Jose Fernandez down in Miami. He hit a home run and he got stopped at home plate by Brian McCann there too. He's not an intense guy. He is, there were a couple of those instances and people, started calling him the sheriff of baseball and some things like that. And he's honestly one of the funniest, most laid back, jokester kind of guys in the clubhouse that I ever had as a teammate. But obviously he's going to come to the defense of his teammates when he has a perception of something being done. So that's what he did. But he was phenomenal.
I love it. Yeah. Who is the I'm just curious now that you're talking about that. Now you're talking about teammates, and I know behind you, right? I've heard you tell this story on other podcasts, Chipper Jones, obviously Bobby Cox, but who would you say was the best teammate that you ever had?
Oh man, that's a hard question. That's so many awesome teammates and awesome in different ways. I can't really think of bad ones, to be honest with you. I was a part of some really great groups there in Atlanta, and even in my time in LA, the teammates were just phenomenal. A lot of guys looking out for each other, trying to help each other. It was just that kind of atmosphere. I think Chipper set the tone for that in Atlanta. You've heard me tell the stories of how he kind of reached out to me and gave me an open door to kind of sit at the table with him and other hitters and learn from them. And I really experienced that from about everybody. Anybody I was willing to ask, I never got turned away, whether it was, Tim Hudson or Derek Lowe or Clayton Kershaw or Zach Greinke. They were all phenomenal.
Great. Yeah. I was just curious about that. Like, I feel like that's a quality that, the guys who are the best teammates, like they're willing to bring you along. Right. I mean, a guy like Clayton Kershaw or Hudson, like they're great. You see their performances, but the fact that they're better guys behind the scenes is what it's actually all about. So yeah, that's cool.
It's not by mistake most of the time.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So listen, man, that's so cool. You threw a couple years for the Braves and then obviously ended with the Dodgers and then had your share of injuries towards the end. What was going on at that time? I mean, you experienced the injuries. You're kind of thinking that you want to hang around the game for a few more years. Just what's going through your head at that time that you experienced the injuries and kind of like, do I hang around or do I get out of baseball?
No, I mean, it wasn't I guess a thought of hanging around. It was more of like, hey, I didn't expect any of this. And then I got there and then I had success and then I was good.
Yeah.
And I finally felt like I belonged and I was, accepted and looked at as a peer of all these guys I looked up to. And then I got hurt. Then I came back a year later, a little over that, and before too long got hurt again. And then my time with the Braves was over and I went out to LA and rehabbed and came back and struggled a little bit and got hurt again. And it became, there was a lot of bitterness inside of myself, a lot of, frustration, a lot of fear that I just, was never going to be healthy again. And that the career path that had been on was gone, but I didn't know what else to do. And ultimately I couldn't get myself to not try to get it back. As long as someone was telling me, hey, I think you can do this medically and physically, then I was going to try. I put in all that work. It was going to be tough for me to walk away. Now had I mentally kind of changed the way I viewed things, with the way I went about my work every day, the kid-like joy in it, yeah, it had changed. The injuries had kind of robbed me of certain aspects of that. I still loved it. I still enjoyed it. It was just different. I don't really know how to explain that. But then, yeah, ultimately after 2016, getting hurt in spring training and spending the year in Phoenix trying to get it back, it just, I felt like I was probably done. But I didn't know what else to do. So when I, had a surgeon tell me that he thought it was this other condition leading to the elbow injuries and that they could fix it, I was open to it because that's what I wanted to hear for, 4 years at that point. Like, hey, what's causing this and how do I fix the root cause so that I can just get healthy and be healthy and pitch? So I tried that for a few years and then, it just didn't happen. It just wasn't working. And that's okay. It wasn't necessarily within my control. I felt good about doing basically everything I could to make it happen.
Sure. Yeah, man. And by the way, yeah, hanging around is not the right term because you weren't really supposed to get there. So it's not like you're like, just hanging around. It's like you realize that you could play there, and then you go through these because if you didn't go through those injuries, I mean, who knows? You could have played for another 5-6 years probably. But things happen. And then so this is what and this is what I was telling you. This is why I started this. Didn't play in the big leagues, didn't even play pro ball, but played college baseball, and then just got a job through a friend. And a few years later, I just found that I still wasn't really pumped necessarily about what I was doing for a career. And I know that for, especially maybe for a big leaguer, like that's got to be a huge identity crisis that you go through. It's like, what do I do? What do I do now? So when you ask yourself that question, what was the answer at that time?
I didn't know. I had no idea what was next, and that is what filled me with such fear. Just kind of crippling fear of, hey, I want to provide, for my family in a way. I want to achieve the dreams that we had when I was playing baseball. Like I didn't want to just give up on all that. So what do I do now? Got 2 kids now, got a young family. Had to figure that out. And I can take you through kind of that thought process. We just kind of reverse engineered things like, hey, we're no longer on this trajectory. But realistically, who has the lifestyle that we want? Who are those people that we know that have that we would like to emulate? And then what do they do? and I found pretty quickly that most of them were entrepreneurial. Um, and so it's something I hadn't thought about. I didn't have any ideas. Um, I obviously didn't have any experience or know-how, but that's when a friend of mine suggested, hey, you should look into franchising, which I, was not on my radar as an option, and I just was completely ignorant on the topic.
So then what is franchising? If you could just go into that. I mean, I've had a few conversations with people about it, and ironically, I was just yesterday talking to a buddy of mine who is, in that world in mosquitoes. Like he's working on a mosquito franchise. And so if you could maybe just explain that for anybody who's listening and who's like, all right, I know McDonald's, I know Burger King, all these things, but what are the other routes that people could go with that?
Yeah, it's everything in every industry, from fitness to beauty to, business to business services, home services, anything you're getting done commercially or residentially on a home or building. There's franchises doing it. And what a franchise is just it's a business that you own, that you're paying a franchise fee up front and an ongoing royalty of your revenue in exchange for their name and their systems and their playbook. So that once I understood that, it really appealed to me. In theory, hey, we come off the court or the field with all of these skills, with all these traits that got us to an elite level. The work ethic, the dedication, the resiliency, the teamwork, the leadership, all of these things, they have real value out in the real world. And when applied in theory to the right system, when I'm having to come to the table and not have to supply an idea, not have to supply, the marketing know-how, sales know-how, any of that stuff, if I could just bring my intangible qualities to a system that fits me and I can use their playbook, then I can take my qualities, I can work hard, I can learn that industry, and I can build a business that's my business. And that's what a franchise is. It's your own independent business attached. You're borrowing their name and playbook, and you're paying them for that. And I like to phrase it as, really, you're paying for your time. That franchise fee, those royalties, you're paying to skip the first 2-3 years of growing pains, to start something you don't know anything about. By they're giving you that playbook to kind of skip ahead and get there in a couple months instead of a couple years on the front end.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I was not even aware of this until probably a few months ago. Like, or it just never even crossed my radar, because when I graduated school, it was kind of like, all right, I have a business degree. So what am I going to do with that business degree? I'm going to go work for a big corporation.
Yep.
All right. And then I'll hopefully get promoted like every year or 2 years. And then there's kind of a career path that's laid out for you, which isn't good. It's not good or bad. It just kind of is what it is. But
Yeah.
it's almost like you can, I don't want to say expedite that process, but maybe have more ownership over your time, your career. I know that's something that you talked about too. It's like you reverse engineer it, but you value your freedom of time. Right. But then what about that upfront? I'm sure there's a question you get often, but like that upfront cost for different franchises.
Yeah, it's pretty similar across the board. If you're going to a McDonald's or fast food, it's going to be structured a little differently. But for the most part, you're talking about a $50,000 franchise fee, and then you're going to have an all-in investment that's going to vary, anywhere from 100,000 up to it could be into the 7 figures depending on what you're looking into. If it's a giant building with a huge build out. Most aren't anywhere near that. And, and I guess I'd like to say that, my opinion or thought, ignorant, unknowing thought on the front end was, oh, people are, they're writing a check for, if this is a $200,000 all-in investment for this business, people are just cutting a check for that. But that's not how it works. There's the SBA, and a lot of other routes where people are funding these through financing typically like a house, 20% down, something like that. And then you're working out a business plan to have that debt service and pay it off as you go, which is something I didn't, even when I was playing, debt was a dirty word, right?
Yeah.
Where then you get out in the real world and you start finding out all these super wealthy people, really, really accomplished people, are leveraging debt to create more wealth or create more value, which is something I'm still learning about. But yeah, these aren't cash bought businesses. These are usually financed, and it's I'd like to say they have their requirements. Each brand does, but somebody with 50,000 liquid and 150 to 200 in net worth is there's options out there, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Then maybe would you mind just sharing a little bit about your experience with Koala, the home installation? That's
Yeah,
still what you're still your
yeah,
franchise now, right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I own the Nashville market of ad. It's gone well. It's a hard business, and that's what I like to make sure people understand is that there's no passive business. If you're getting into a business, running a business is hard. There's a lot of challenges. A wise person in this industry told me nobody wants to run a business. Nobody. Some of us are just willing to put up with it, for the potential reward and payoff, right? So it's not this easy thing. You'll see people on social media talking about these simple businesses that are so easy, print money while you sleep, all that stuff. I mean, anybody selling you how easy a business is selling you something, right? Like because it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all. You can do it really well and make it easier on your day to day, but it's still a business and it's not passive. It's not like investing in real estate or the stock market.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know were you literally in addicts when you first started
Yeah,
out, and now you've
yeah,
gotten out. You're more on the operator side at this point.
yeah. With my business, I was able, to hire somebody to do sales early, my now GM, and do some of the operations stuff when we were starting with one truck and one crew of installers. There's not a whole lot of moving parts. So I was able to answer the phones full time, do all the back end stuff, handle the marketing, do everything behind the scenes. Now, did I get in addicts to sell insulation? Yeah. Did I get in addicts to install insulation? Yeah. I did those things. It wasn't my day to day activity, but I did them when necessary. And then about a year in, I was able to hire an additional manager, and hired additional salespeople, hired more crews, and kind of pulled hired somebody to answer our phones full time. That was big for freeing up my time so I could focus on other things. But yeah, as time went, I was able to grow a team around me.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are maybe is there anything you would have done differently? Like you start learning about the franchise. I mean, obviously you make mistakes along the way and you learn, but if you could go back to then and be like, all right, I wish I knew this was more of something that I should pay attention to at the time. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Oh man. Yeah, a lot of the I wish I would have known things revolve around like marketing. Like I wish I wouldn't have signed that 13-month billboard agreement. I wish I wouldn't have spent all that money running a TV commercial that just wasn't very effective. Things like that. And then on the other, on the operations side, I wish I would have known or thought to look into different, processes, or taught my salespeople different things to ways to communicate things that we now use, to set ourselves apart. Yeah, I knew it wasn't going to be easy getting in, so I'm not going to say, oh, I wish I would have known how difficult it was. It was tough at times. It's tough when you're when you're first starting out and you have to fire somebody, or you have to hire somebody, or hiring a new helper, an installer, and I see them, I talk to them, I'm like, oh man, I see a lot in this kid. I think he could do this for a year. He could be a crew leader after that. I think he's got the kind of personality. He can deal with customers and become a manager someday. And then 2 days later, he no call, no shows, and we never hear from him again. Right. So I learned pretty quickly not to do, not to use rose-colored lenses on every situation. Just learn more of the realities of things over time. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's being a business owner, I'm sure, right? It's you have more responsibility. I'm not a
Yeah.
business, like, I can't speak to that from experience. I'm not a business owner, but I'm sure that there's a lot more to it than being a W-2 employee. You just show up. You're not punching a clock and then shutting it off. Yeah. And because you're going to reap the reward. Hopefully down the road, you'll reap the reward from that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're putting a lot into it. You're trying to find and incentivize people to kind of be on your team and view it as a team where we're all pushing in the same direction with the same goal.
Yep.
And learning how to do that, and learning how each one of my people need different things, and how to get them that and do it in an efficient way, it's fun, because those are the puzzles and the challenges. Like, hey, how do we break into this other segment of our industry and market? What can we try? Those kinds of initiatives. Those are fun. I like that. I like that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also, in addition to running your own franchise business, you help connect people with franchise themselves. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I knew a couple things right away when I was learning about franchising. I was like, man, this, light bulb went off. Boom, I've got these skills and these abilities that I can't necessarily write on a resume, but I think they would work in this model, in a franchise model. If I find the right one and apply myself to it, I think those skills will work. But then the second thing I knew was like, man, why didn't, someone from the MLB, tell me that this was an option? Why wasn't this kind of, put in front of me as a potential route? So I thought right then, well, I'll be that, because there is a barrier, right? There's a barrier when you're working with athletes where, there's an investment involved in this. So anything, that involves any level of investment, walls are going to go up when you're talking to athletes, especially ones that are, you're transitioning, your senses are heightened. Like, I need to figure out what's next, and I need to get it right. So I knew that if I did it and was successful at it, then I could potentially help others and really, help them succeed, but also help them avoid things that could be disastrous at the same time. So around that, when I was able to separate myself more and more from the day to day, that's what I did. I joined a network of consultants and went through a couple months of training on how to better serve them and take them through a process of figuring out how to assess what a good fit for an individual would look like, and then how to really effectively coach them on how to do their due diligence and evaluate these opportunities the right way.
Huh. Okay. Can you share any of those? Not to give away your services here, but like, what are some of those initial questions that you're asking somebody that is connected with you or comes to you?
Yeah. Well, I think it all. I mean, franchising and businesses alike, it's very operator dependent. So I think where people go wrong is they buy into a system expecting the franchisor to supply their success to them. Like, hey, well, we just had a grand opening. Everybody's going to come run and they want our service now. That's just not the reality. That's not how it works. Like they are offering you something, but you can't rely solely on that. Like this is franchising is a way, and I think this resonates incredibly well with athletes. It's another avenue where you can bet on yourself, where you can say, hey, I want uncapped potential to reap the reward for the efforts I'm putting in. So it has to be viewed as, this is me betting on myself. I'm going to drive this machine. And I'm getting, in a franchise, I'm looking for a great partner in that endeavor. So what I try to help people do on the front end is figure out who they are and what they want, on a major level. It can be kind of cheesy, something like, hey, I want you to go through an exercise here where you sit down and essentially try to boil yourself down to a mission statement, and the smaller, if you can get down to like a 1 or 2 sentence mission statement for what you want, who you are, and what you want your life to look like, then that can be the anchor that we come back to. If that's who you are and what you want to be true to, then we can evaluate businesses or any opportunity based on, hey, is this opportunity making my boat stray from that anchor? Like, how far did I drift away from where I really want to be? So looking at that, and then getting into some likes and dislikes and strengths and weaknesses. That kind of gives us the basis for a model of what a good fitting business and how that would serve you as a potential franchisee. So it's more about the characteristics of the person than it is the business itself. This is a really, really dumbed down analogy, but it's almost like the franchise is kind of a widget in this example, the way we're looking at it. And it's not, but that's the mentality. We're looking to plug something in that fits with what you're looking to do. And then once we start looking at actual brands, then it's about poking holes. Then it's about like, hey, I just presented these to you for all of these reasons that we have agreed kind of fits with what you're looking to do. Well, now let's investigate it and let's see what they're telling you about the operations, about everything. And then I'm going to teach you how to adequately question that and evaluate it and verify it, and really paint a picture of what it would look like for you, Joe, in X, Y, or Z business and running that. Because these are, opening up a business is a substantial life event, right? It's not to be, done on a whim or taken lightly. It deserves, time and attention and effort. And that's what I coach people on how to do, is how to deal with that, how to deal with the fear that comes at making any major decision. And really, the basis for that is like, hey, we know where your anchor is. We dropped that anchor. Let's evaluate this business with that in mind. See if it drifts us far from center there. And then, can you see yourself in it? Does it fit? You're going to have that fear, which is healthy. You should have fear. If you don't, then you should run away, because there's something you're not seeing if you don't have fear. And then, can we get the information from the brand, from the existing franchisees to either meet and exceed that fear or not? Because either one of those that's the desired result for me, is to get the information to tell you, does it meet and exceed it or not? And then you'll know what to do, I guess. And that was me rambling for quite a long time.
No, listen, it's good though, because I feel like it's so easy to overcomplicate a lot of things. And when you really just get back to like, all right, and maybe that's the hardest part, especially just to tie this all back in, probably one of the harder parts for an athlete who finishes and they're like, okay, who finishes playing sports and they're like, okay, now who am I? So you really have to like you're talking about the anchor. You really have to re-anchor yourself into, okay, well, kind of what you talked about before, reverse engineering. What do you want your life to look like? What do you value? Um, so yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I feel like but it's not super easy, you know, like
No,
it's very
it's definitely
simple.
not
It's
easy.
just not easy. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I love to overcomplicate things and like, but it's like, hey, if you just dumb it down, like, what do you value? Do you value your family and friends? Do you value time? Which I'm pretty sure everybody would say, but they just don't actually take the steps
yeah.
to get there. You know what I mean? So yeah, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah, and part of that, because everybody wants it, right? They want the reward. They want the freedom of time. They want to be able
yeah,
to, travel and work from wherever. They want all these things, but then, actually getting in this process and looking and seeing what it looks like, you really start to see like what it would look like for you to be in it. Because every
mhm,
business is going to have challenges. All of them have, you know, real challenges. So I think part of the process is, hey, this set of challenges might fit better with Joe than this set of challenges. Because when something goes wrong, and it will, are you going to curl up in a ball with this set of challenges? Or are you going to be able to, you're more likely to just kind of jump in with this set of challenges because it fits your skills, fits your personality, it fits where your comforts lie. Like those are the kind of things that you need to evaluate. But it's definitely, yeah, if you're seeing somebody online, or somebody's, taking you through a process, looking at businesses, and it's all about, the numbers and how easy, how simple something is. Run, run, flat out run. it's
yeah,
it's it's
yeah.
they're not in it for your best interest.
Well, especially on Twitter and everything too, because I know you're. Yeah, I think I saw you were on Twitter and have like a decent following, but you just see you just see so much stuff, and it's easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole of, and yeah, believing it,
Yeah,
and then it's easy to get sucked down the comparison rabbit, like all that stuff. But yeah, you really got to take a step back and be like, okay,
and most of it's fake too.
yeah, it's most of it. Yeah,
Most of what people are putting out, especially business wise. I mean, there's a million people talking about $0 down businesses. Here's how I grew this and this.
hmm,
Well, they're not providing any proof, and then they're trying to sell you some course, some online course.
yeah,
And it's all a scam. Again, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Especially in business.
for sure.
The people that have real freedom. These are people that build a business for 40 years and have grown teams underneath them for decades to where they're really not that involved. You're not doing that with a business an existing business you're buying, or a franchise business you're starting up. It's just that doesn't exist. And if that's what you're looking for, um, I encourage people not to do it. Get a W-2. There's days I wish I had a W-2, right? Because 5 o'clock hits, I'm punching out, and I don't have
Yeah,
to think about it. I'm not worrying about it. Where the weight of some of these decisions isn't following you in the way it does when you own the business. So and that's part of me helping other former athletes, is me trying to advocate and look out for them in a way that I didn't have, where I at my darkest moment of fear, I would have done anything just to cross something off the list of what was next for me and my family. So I can take people through a process where they don't pay me to do that, and I'm happy to do that, and I do that all the time with the goal, knowing, hey, we're part of this athletic fraternity. We need to be leaning on each other a lot more, and the franchising world is my small little niche corner where I can offer some value, I can offer some insight, I can show you what this looks like, so that you can cross it off your list if it's not for you, while also being real with you, and not selling you something.
yeah, man. No, it's awesome. especially because, yeah, to your point, it's from experience. Like you experienced that yourself. You got back, you had injuries, you had to figure out what you were doing, and now you're pouring it back into guys, which I'm sure is probably way more rewarding than a dollar that you make. You know, obviously you have a family to support, but yeah, you're
It
helping
is.
other people. So
It
yeah.
is. And, I've got a business with some employees that I love, and, but I'm not fired up about, fiberglass insulation in your attic, spray foam,
I don't
but
know. It's pretty exciting. I don't know. I have a house myself.
yeah,
I probably need some, but
yeah. But yeah, I get fired up, and I'm real passionate about helping other athletes. And this is kind of, again, just looking around is what do I have to offer? Well, this is what I have to offer for now. What that looks like 5, 10 years from now, I think it'll look different. Um,
mhm,
but I want to, I've got a real passion for helping other athletes, and I want to do that.
that's good, man. That's awesome, Brandon. So all right. How's so I and we'll wrap up here. I appreciate you spending this time. This is great. Um,
It's my pleasure.
yeah. How's like your family? Like how's your wife? Because I know your wife was sick for a bit. Is she
She's
everything
doing
good?
better.
Okay.
She's doing better. We're getting there. We've gone through a journey there, but the kids are growing like weeds. I mean, we just had to go to the mall yesterday evenings. Both of my kids outgrown all their pants. We just got them 2 months ago. They're fighting the tides in these pants. These poor kids. So, we're having fun. It's a good time right now.
That's awesome, man. So all right, Brandon. Well, listen, thanks again, man. I feel like probably didn't do your playing career justice with this call because like you were just a super underrated, you undrafted guy and then you play in the big leagues. So, you're a pretty humble dude, I think, for the fact that you played however many years, what, 4 or 5 years in the big leagues. And now you're helping people after your own experience. So just wanted to say thanks, man. Where can people find you too if they're interested in franchising or just learning more about it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
as
that's how I
jokes go,
found you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not on there every day. So if you send me messages and I don't respond for a couple days, I will see it and I will respond to it at some point. But yeah, and then, you can find my email on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'd be happy to connect and happy to, if any former athletes are listening right now and just want to, hey, I'm not really interested in franchising, but I'd love to just talk about, your transition, or, I'm happy to do it. Like, let's get on a Zoom and chat. I'd love to.
That's awesome of you to offer, man. Even if they are Phillies fans and reaching out to
Yeah,
a former
yeah,
Atlanta Brave.
especially if
So
they're really safe.
that's great. So thanks for that, Brandon. Yeah, I'll link some stuff in the show notes too if people want to reach out. So all right, man. Thanks again for the time.
Yeah, my pleasure, Joe.
Awesome, man.
That was good. I think that was fun.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I really just wanted to